Welcome to Leadership Kung Fu with your hosts, Sandi Verrecchia and Jennifer Long.
Welcome to another episode of Leadership Kung Fu. I'm here with my colleague Jen Long from Colorado, from Own Up.
Hello, Sandi Verrecchia from Satori Consulting in Toronto, Canada. How are you?
I'm great. I feel like we say this all the time and our listeners know who we are, but I guess it's for the newbies out there. That's who we are.
That's
Jen
right.
and Sandi.
Thank you. Thank you for downloading and listening.
Yeah.
I'm Jen and this is Sandi.
Yeah. So we are Leadership Kung Fu. We are talking about the ins and outs of leadership and how it's not as easy to be a leader, and certainly in today's environment where things are a little bit different. And much like Kung Fu, when we're making change, you have to figure out how to do it, and then have the patience to work through it and wait for things to happen throughout the end. And so when we're looking at leadership and talking about Kung Fu, we really think they go hand in hand, because leadership is not linear, and you have to have the patience to get where you want to go, and to help people along the way.
And the discipline and the practice.
And the discipline of the practice, just like Kung Fu. Just like
Kung
Miyagi.
Fu.
Miyagi.
Especially right now, because leaders are just not cutting it right now. And if there's one thing leaders need, it's some real Kung Fu on what they're doing. And It's the most challenging time to lead, more so than it has been. And it's been sustained, right? We went from a pandemic into this crazy.
Into this crazy. And for those who are listening to it, we're in April 2025. So now you know what the crazy is, given the time frame that we're dealing with. But it is like it has been a crazy roller coaster for the last 7 years, and managers sort of are in that they're taking the brunt of it. And so every podcast we try to focus on a different area of leadership where they can learn and where you can learn, and hopefully we give you some tips and tricks for that. Today we decided that we would sort of almost go back in time, it feels like, from pandemic, but it's something that is with us now, which is hybrid work environment. And in the news these days, we're hearing more about companies that are shifting back to that, mandating the 5-day a week work week. And we thought we would talk about the pros and cons of that, what's happening out in the marketplace, and some tips on how managers can maybe help navigate this, help their employees navigate this, and how managers need to influence decisions around these sorts of things that are happening, because they impact the well-being and the individuals on their teams.
Right. Leaders are making decisions about bringing everybody back. Let's all go back in 5 days a week. Let's all do all the things. And the workforce is still adamantly in love with hybrid and remote work.
Yep.
And so it's a flashpoint for a lot of companies, because they're, like we're saying, mandating, and people are showing up with no place to work because they've gotten rid of space. I mean, you're reading the stories. And so we're looking at, what can you do differently as a leader? How can you start to think about this and really give your middle managers and your frontline managers, right, some credence in some of this decision making, because they are so much closer to the work than senior leadership, people who are actually making these decisions.
Yeah. And which says, you need to ask, and you need to listen to what they're saying. Right. And so I think one of the things we were talking about before was that we ask a lot, right? Lots of surveys, do you want to work from home? Do you want to not? But we're not actually acting on them.
They're not making decisions based on that. Right. Yeah. And so everybody's irritated about, stop asking me what I want when you don't do anything with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of become universal. People are getting pulsed and surveyed. I don't know how many times in a year. Big companies are doing it hundreds of times, right? So they're getting surveyed on all of the things. And not taking action, not taking meaningful action relative to what these surveys are. So knock it off, unless you're going to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Tip
And
number
that goes
one.
for any survey, right? My big
Yes.
pet peeve is always engagement surveys, and you get all this great stuff, but may not feel really good, so you don't want to actually action it because then people think you weren't doing a good job. And it's like, if you ask, do, right?
Right,
You
right.
just
And I just hammered some engagement survey comment. There was a comment that came through LinkedIn this morning that I caught on to about just stop the nonsense with engagement surveys. They don't do anything.
Mhm.
And I was like, yes, amen to that. Please save your money, because I can't tell you any client who's had an engagement survey and had a meaningful increase in engagement based on years of surveying. I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
And so stop creating data and
Mhm.
do something that actually is going to be more diagnostic. So anyway, that's
That's a
another
whole
podcast.
diatribe. Whole diatribe. But so we were talking a little bit, sort of in our pre-show, talking about this, and I think I want to caution that these large organizations. So the Canadian government has mandated everybody back 5 days a week. Again, no space. People have made life decisions based on the fact that they were able to work fully remote for a very long time, and now it's like everybody back, and so it's creating a lot of stress. And some larger companies, Amazon is one, have said this for their office employees, or not for their packaged employees, um, but it's not. I think they're the big ones that are loud voices. It's
Mhm.
not everyone. There's still a whole lot of remote work going on, successfully so, in a
Right.
lot of organizations. So, don't be swayed by the fact that Amazon has said that, and now we know, I think you said it, Jen. It's the Me Too movement of hybrid work, right?
That's right. It's
Yeah,
me too, but back to work.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Exactly. Exactly. But it was interesting to learn, right? So um KPMG ran a survey and they're saying 79% of CEOs, right? So people leading businesses, and they're doing a global survey, right? Saying that 79% of CEOs anticipate a return to 5-day in office work by 2027.
mm,
So a slow roll back by a large percentage of CEOs are looking at that. And that's an interesting
yeah,
statistic.
yeah. What do you think? Do you want to make a bet on it?
I think that the workforce is going to say, right? And
Yeah,
there's going to be some influence there. And so when we were kind of prepping this, it's such a moving target, and so it's interesting when you think about all the numbers and all the stats and the Me Too, and, well, if they're doing it, maybe we should be doing it, well, what does that mean, and all that kind of stuff, and what that really led us to. Because and I'll throw in, Sandy and I were both excited about the figure that Australia, 20% of employers have no office attendant requirements. Let's all
28.
go to Australia if we want remote work, right?
Yeah,
Because there's also a fair number of organizations that are like, look, this is way better than we thought it was going to be, and so we're not gonna institute that. But what it really gets down to, and this is where I think the tips for you guys are going to come in, is how you're thinking about it, right?
mhm,
If you're leading this and managing it, what's your frame of mind as you make decision and as you make policy?
yeah,
Because you've got the cost of office space and overhead, right? We look at it through the financial lens, of
always.
course. But then, really, are you looking at it through the lens of how your work is best done? Right? What does the work tell you? And how does that serve as the primary foundation of what your policies and decisions want to be?
Yeah, and I think, if one of the things that they can be thinking about is, if your costs weren't as high, would you be as apt to make decisions, right? So if your costs for your rent and things like that, one of the things I was reading about was organizations that are looking at rent as a variable cost by saying, we're going to continue with our hybrid. We're sure we will want some in-person days, but we're going to rent out our desk space on the days when people aren't here. And so all of a sudden you're cutting your costs and you're making it work both ways. So it's sort of a win-win proposition. So again, it's that, how do you reframe to ensure that you're making decisions that are going to be appropriate for people, and not just on the financial side of things.
Well, right. And we've talked about behavior, right? And we've talked about context drives behavior.
Yeah.
What kind of processes and systems are you setting up to get the behavior you want? And if you're looking for productivity, these processes and systems may work better in a remote hybrid depending on what it is. And I know there's this whole idea of when we use equity as everybody else should be treated the same, as
Yes.
opposed to what best serves the business, and how do we codify, rationalize, and create a clear why around why this group operates this way and this group operates this way. Because there's something to be said to understand that it's not about everybody gets the same treatment. It's everybody gets the same opportunity because they get to work in environments that are conducive to the work they do. And if you can't frame that up in a way that makes sense to people, you're obviously not thinking about it deep enough.
Yeah. 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 One of the things that I was reading or listening to so you were sort of talking about that whole equity thing, but also um, we really need to think about it in terms of team, right? And so some teams may need to be in office more or in person more than other teams. And again, to exactly what you were saying is really looking at the work versus the the expectation that everybody has to be the same. And that takes time, right? And so talking about kung fu, it's a
Yeah.
discipline of actually taking the time to look at the various teams to say, team A, perhaps it's better if you're in office. Team B, you're doing a great job doing what you're doing, and you don't need to be together as much as because it doesn't, it's
Well,
not
right.
creating
And
isolation. There is some socialization, it's the communications there, that sort of thing. But again, let's look at things as more individualistic than holistic.
right. And it's legit, right? So I do a lot of work in manufacturing, and you've got people who have to be on site because they've got hands on the things they're building. And they get pissed off because they see other people in engineering or whatever who are doing remote, and they believe that the people who are not there doing don't have the proximity, who aren't showing up to do the thing, don't have the same sense of urgency, don't
Mhm.
have the same sense of commitment. And while that's a perception, when you talk to the people who are they're going to have another whole story, right?
Totally.
Depending
Totally.
on how you talk to them. But the opportunities is, how are you creating the connectivity there so that they don't get that sense, right?
Mhm.
And to me, those are the processes and systems that are going to make your business more impactful, rather than let's make everybody just be there, right?
Yeah.
Because then you get a bunch of angry, resentful people who are like, I just got to be here because I could be doing this from somewhere else, right?
Yes. And because I need a paycheck, and I need a paycheck today. And that's a really good sort of segue into what's happening, especially in the US with the massive layoffs that are happening. Canada, it had the highest amount of unemployment or layoffs last month as well. So there's a lot of people out there looking for jobs. And will their
Right.
willingness to be in office because they need the job start shifting the need for it to be in office, if that
Right.
made any
And
sense.
and this is where I thought it got very interesting, because when you really think about that, right? Because they're leaving a government sector, moving into a private sector, right? And does this feed the well, if you don't want to be here, I'll just go hire one of these people. But really, because businesses are so stymied about what their decision making is about the future, because
Hmm.
are we having tariffs? Are we not having tariffs? Like, what's happening in the
Yeah.
marketplace that's going to create our ability to grow, not grow, sustain, stay open, right? Having a more flexible workforce where you can hire people when you need them and unload them when you don't, right? Is a case for a gig economy, is a
Sure.
case for a remote workforce, is a case for a hybrid workforce where you don't have to invest in the overhead, but you can get the people you need when you need them. And so I think there's an argument to be made in both directions based on the volatility of what kind of growth experience and diminishing experience businesses are having right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yes.
there's there's a strategy just in thinking about that.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
again, but that is again, going back to the point of the whole kung fu and influence, you need to have that middle management influence for them to see what's actually happening within their shop floors and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But willingness to take the time to listen and to actually put into policy things that are actually going to impact for the greater good. And one of the things that we've learned throughout the pandemic and the years that have followed is that the mental state of people is maybe not as resilient. I don't know if that's the right word.
Less tolerant, less we're impatient, we're a little bit burnt out, we're a little
pissed
frustrated by the roller coaster of the world, right? And because things feel a little whiplashy, people are irritated because leaders are not being strategic.
Right.
And right now, strategy happens in the moment. Like let's just look at the next 6 months, right? Let alone 5 years out.
Oh God, never five.
Right? What are we doing in the next 12 to 18 to really focus on what we need to focus on? And leaders have to be much in this kind of volatility. They have to be making sense. Yes. They have to spend the time making meaning and clarifying for people. This is how we see it. Therefore, these are the decisions we're making for now. Mm-hmm. And they have to be strong and clear around what that is so that as they set policy, as they move people around, they don't feel like they've got a sense of reactionary as opposed to strategic. Mm-hmm. And that's a big ask. That's a big ask.
Yeah, I think the thing that comes to mind when you say that is, the adage of, people leave bosses and not organizations necessarily. And if you're a leader and you're not seen as credible or not seen as taking the time or strategic, and you're not giving the why behind things, it's just do it attitude, you're going to see more people leave. And
and I think there's a false sense of hubris right now that the employers have the advantage. So now we're just going to tell people your workforce is the solution and they represent you, and you can do malicious compliance all day long. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Is that what you really want? And your middle managers know. They know. They're closest to the work and they understand it the best. And how can they help you? How can they be in the conversation?
Yeah, for sure. And so the next piece of this, I think, is the discussion since the pandemic has, how do we hold people accountable? We can't see them, therefore they're probably not working. They're doing their laundry, they're sunbathing, they're having coffee with friends, that sort of thing. And how do we hold them accountable? And I think it's a really wrong way of, yes, we need to hold people accountable, don't get me wrong, but it's a wrong way of looking at it, right? Because it's you're coming at it from a negative standpoint. People aren't working versus people are working, and we are holding them accountable to a solid set of expectations and OKRs or whatever it might be that you have set up in your organization. The communication around those becomes important because you're not face to face across the desk and seeing them. But I think it's really important to think about as managers, how are we managing to get the best out of people in a hybrid work environment?
Right. How are you, regardless of any environment, how are you setting them up to do their best work?
True.
And what does their best work look like? And how do you know? Right.
Yeah.
And those are really the conversations if you're going to focus on engagement and productivity. Mm-hmm. Because those are the two things that you're using as the why behind your policy. And are you able to validate that? Right? Because are your people more engaged now that you force them back in the workspace?
No.
They're actually more disengaged, right? So data tells us currently that they are even more disengaged by being forced to go back to work.
Right. And so they're looking for jobs, right? They're there in body, not in spirit.
Oh, share
they're pissed
all
off
this
because they have to be there.
Yeah, share all the acronyms or nomenclature that's shown up since.
I was looking up, I thought it was funny to say, what has come out of in terms of different related terms. So we had coffee badging, I hadn't heard that one before. Had you, Jen?
No, I love it though. Coffee
Those are when
badging.
employees come into the office briefly. They swipe their badge just to meet an attendance requirement before leaving again.
Fantastic.
I thought that was great. They had
resentful coffee badging.
well, yeah, that's right. They had quiet vacation, which is similar to quiet quitting, which we all heard, right? People were just sort of going off into sunset. But this refers to people who were pretending to be working remotely by actually taking time off. I think
I will work your systems and I will still have my vacation.
Productivity theater. Employees engaging in visible but often meaningless tasks to appear busy in a hybrid work environment. I'm going to suggest that happens in the office and in a hybrid work environment. There are a lot of people.
That's the definition of most meetings.
Well, yeah, right? It's totally the definition of most meetings.
Productivity theater. I love it.
Yeah. Whatever. Then we have the ghost colleague, which, that happens when you're in the next office, a colleague who's technically employed but rarely seen online or in meetings. I think, maybe I'm glass half full, not glass half empty kind of gal, but, that sort of stuff happens whether they can see you or not. Mm-hmm. But that is a few, not the many. Like, most people show up to their job, whether they're in their pajamas or half suit in their home office, or if they're at the office, with good intentions.
Absolutely. Most people want to do a good job. Yeah. They want to be connected to meaningful work.
Yes.
And it's when you make it meaningless, making me come in to sit in a cubicle, to actually talk to no one more than who I would talk to normally if I were remote, right? That is what makes it meaningless.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that disengages people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. We go in the office about 4 days a week, and only because one of us, not me in particular, loves going in the office, loves it. Right?
Loves it. Yeah. Some people do.
But I'm in my office, coaching or whatever, door shut almost all day. And I hear no chatter in the office. And I'm like, we could do this by ourselves. Yeah. But they're super busy. And they would be the same level of busyness if they were sitting there or sitting in their home office.
Right. Right. I mean, that was kind of the whole genesis behind the WeWork movement, right? When the gig workers were all feeling isolated. Oh, it'd be really good to be with a bunch of other people who are just doing different stuff and get around and call, have some connection to others. And, so great, socialization is important. Yes, getting your teams together is important. I've got clients who are 75%, 80% remote and who intentionally do something called Employee Appreciation Week, and they bring everybody together. And if you're on a team, they have team summits. Those are done live together. And so instead of spending the money on office, they spend the money on travel to get them into location a couple times a year, right? And that's how they manage that. And they've got a really dynamic culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, and the work they do is very processes and very client-based. And so it works great. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing we're really advocating is stop thinking about it's a Me Too thing and we all got to do this. And it's going to give you this illustrious, elusive productivity that you don't feel like you have right now. I would tell you, if your managers are suffering and don't feel like people are doing the things they need to do, deal with your manager's capabilities. Mm-hmm. Look at training them on what they need to do to help those people.
Right. Which is how to have the right conversations, how to be curious, how to engage with them, how to set the right clear expectations with them, and how to have those conversations when people aren't meeting them. And also to how to celebrate when people are. Right. There's so many pieces that, if they don't know how to lead properly, it doesn't matter if your person is in the cubicle beside them or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're adamantly going to say no, yeah, Jen, Sandi, what up? Bringing them all back. Right. If you're going to do it, why? Be really, really clear. Make it really, really understandable. Right.
And based on something. I think, there's so much data out there now. We are a data economy. Like, base it on some facts, not personal bias.
What is co-location going to do for them, for the business, for the team, for the projects? What is that going to offer? Right? Why is an hour commute and 2 hours of my day going to pay off for me and the business?
Yes. Yeah. Right. And that's the key in that is that you're looking at it from the employee's perspective and the business's perspective. And I think many decisions are made from a business perspective. We sort of started that at the top of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other piece of what you were talking about before, Jen, was shifting from in person or in office to in person. And
Mm-hmm.
organizations, as you say, the one that you suggested, they're getting really creative on what does in person mean. And so it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that we have to be in an office, but maybe we are going to an offsite or something like that, or maybe we're meeting at a WeWork co-location site or whatever it might be.
Right.
But be creative, right?
Well, and work your data, work your problem solving, right? Be disciplined. Notice where bias is playing in.
Mhm.
Be conscious of the bias that's coming into the room when you're having these discussions,
Yeah.
right? What are your alternative futures? What do those look like? What are the things that are impacting your decisions relative to that? What kind of things are the most important in terms of those impact? And if you don't have rigor around having this conversation, you are just going to have a bunch of data and your opinion about that data drive your decision.
Yeah.
And so decision making right now, and maybe this is our next podcast, is the skill set. How
Mhm.
good are you at your decision making rigor, your complex problem solving, and really starting to understand what is the problem we're trying to solve, and is it the right problem? And maybe that ought to be the next follow on, because you're not going to be able to address this effectively if you're missing that kind of rigor.
Yeah, I think that's
Based on your approach.
that whole red teaming thing, right? Is ensuring that
Yeah.
you're solving the right problem.
Yeah.
I think, also using some matrices when, when you're solving these problems and
Mm.
sort of bucket things so that it sort of takes it out of your personal bias or your personal judgment, and looking at things from a step back perspective can maybe help with the
Well, and
clarity.
who's in the room when you're doing that?
Well, yeah,
Because if it's
totally.
just a bunch of senior executives, you are missing perspectives.
Yes.
You are missing where you're not going to hear the signals you need to hear to make these kind of decisions. And that, I also think, is when we talk about the discipline of good decision making and red teaming, is who you put on your red team is also just as important of how you do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we were talking about, a little earlier, it's like those middle managers, they see it all. They
Yeah.
need to be in those rooms with those decisions that are being made.
Absolutely.
So, one, to hear their voice. Also, it's a great opportunity to up their leadership ability.
Well, they could be the one person who's like, if you considered this, and it could be the whole reason your plan fails.
Yes.
One simple question, because you can't see it through their eyes.
Yes. As long
Yeah.
as, as upper leaders, you give them the space and the grace to open up and say what they want to say. So,
Yes. Yes. And so, tip, this is an investment in culture, not policy.
yeah, it is. Totally is.
This is an investment in how you create your business culture, and you run the risk, if you don't do the due diligence and run the rigor, of really creating a cultural nightmare that you didn't expect, that you're like, oh, unintended consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that's the first thing that'll go, because how people are treated, the conversations they're having together, all that stuff is definitely an outcome of how they perceive how they're being treated relative to this. It's a huge
Yeah.
impact. Huge
impact. And mental health is a byproduct of this, and it's come to the forefront so much so since pandemic. We really have to be thinking about that. And those unintended consequences, they are huge when you're forcing people to do something that
change.
or it doesn't seem to make sense to them.
Yeah.
Or very disruptive after 7 years of working a certain way. And now
Right.
it's like, it's that whiplash. It's the tariff whiplash of,
Right.
that's happening. And so
Right. And
had
there's
to have
probably some people who experience it better culture, a better relationship to their teams, a better experience. And now you want to put them back in something that's less, that they know is less, that they are fully going to expect, where I'm going to go back into a toxic environment where I have to deal with this, and this, where I don't have to do that now.
Yeah.
And so,
And it's going to cost me more because now I have to have gas and I have to, have to buy pants, all that kind of stuff.
yeah. So, there's a whole side of, I mean, the mental health change, forcing people through the knothole,
Yeah.
is going to impact attitude. It's going to impact behavior. It's going to impact performance.
Mhm.
And that's not easily recoverable.
No.
So thinking, oh, the typical J curve, we're going to have a moment where it all kind of suffers for a minute and then it'll come back. That J curve, that could be deep and long. That
That
can be
ditch of
deep and
doubt
long.
from William Bridges, that is going to be a crevasse.
Yeah. Yeah. It's especially if you haven't got the capabilities and the willingness to do it, to adapt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you just throw people off the cliff and they end up in the valley of resentment for a long period of time.
Yeah. And so, it's so much about culture. It totally is. And so, I don't want to repeat what you said, but it's not about policy, it's about culture. And what kind of culture do you want in your organization should be one of the conversations that you should be talking about. And how is it aligned to where you are today? Is there a gap? And how do we bridge that gap?
Right.
So it's not about how do we build the next policy and write it and send it out to everybody, I think.
Right. So I guess where we'll wrap on this is approach it right from, it's not about performance and engagement. It's about what does the work tell you, right? What do your middle managers have to tell you about that, right? And do the due diligence on the decision.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of that is make sure that your middle managers and line managers, frontline managers have the skills that they need. Invest in those people because they're the future of the organization, many of them. And they are the ones that are, seeing what's happening and are the voice. So, invest in your leadership training for your management staff so that they can brilliantly handle anything that comes along, whether it's
whatever
back to work
decision
or
you're
not.
making, because I'm not getting any camp on what's right and what's wrong.
No.
I feel like that's the test of the leadership, to know what that is and to be able to sell that completely and thoroughly with good information and good belief behind the decision they're making.
Yes. No personal bias.
No personal bias, because you've done the work.
Yes.
All right. That's it for us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to have a listen, think this through, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Please tell us, leave comments, tell your friends, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
All right. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Sandy. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. You can check out Sandy's website at satoriconsultinginc.ca. That's SATORI Consulting inc.ca. And you can check out Jen's website at accountabilityatwork.com. If you like what you hear, let us know by leaving a review on your favorite listening platform. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.